Renault Emblème, a laboratory on wheels for low-carbon mobility. In response to the challenges of climate change and resource conservation, the automotive industry is undergoing a major transformation. With Emblem, Renault is continuing the exploration it launched with the Scenic Vision concept in 2022. By fully exploring the possibilities, it aims to create a working prototype of a spacious, comfortable and high-tech family car that takes decarbonisation to new levels. No aspect of decarbonisation can be studied in isolation. Any approach must address the entire life cycle of the vehicle from cradle to grave in 5 key areas: eco-design, sourcing, production, use and end of life. The Renault Emblème, developed by Ampere, is a demo car that reflects this approach. A vision of a low-carbon family car from start to finish, it emits 90% less greenhouse gases, CO2 EQ, than the 2019 base year throughout its entire life cycle. Every technical, technological and stylistic choice was dictated by strict specifications targeting new levels of low-carbon mobility. Renault Emblème explores intelligent, reliable and workable combinations, particularly in terms of resources, materials, production, use and end-of-life recovery. In this way, it achieves a 70% reduction in the carbon footprint for the production of all its parts. At the same time, 50% of the materials used to build the car are recycled and almost all of the materials used can be recycled at the end of their service life. Engineers and designers work together to find the best solutions in terms of aerodynamics and energy efficiency. The result is magnificent, an elegant shooting brake, 4.80 meters long, that places equal emphasis on style, interior technology and carbon footprint. Renault Emblème invites you to travel with a contemporary, poetically designed cabin. Innovative technologies include a new wide-open panorama screen that spans the length of the dashboard. The dual-energy electric powertrain under the rear floor runs on electricity and hydrogen, an ideal combination for lower carbon journeys over both short and long distances. Renault Group is positioning itself as a key player in low-carbon mobility. Following the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, the group adapted its strategy to reduce greenhouse gas (GHG) emissions from its operations and contribute to keeping global temperature rise well below 2 degrees Celsius. Renault Group aims to reach net zero globally by 2050 and net zero for European operations by 2040, contributing to the carbon neutrality goal. This goal is supported by Ampere, the group entity dedicated specifically to smart electric vehicles. Renault Emblème is at the forefront of this revolution. The aim of the Renault Emblème project was to achieve maximum decarbonisation by designing a car that is attractive, efficient, family-friendly, comfortable, high-tech and versatile to use. More than a concept car, it is a pleasure to look at, be in and drive, a demo car on the road, a real invitation to travel. Lifecycle analysis, LCA, is a scientific method used to measure the environmental impact of a vehicle from cradle to grave. It takes into account raw material extraction and component production, as well as vehicle assembly, transport, use, maintenance and recycling. It is an international, multi-criteria tool used by Groupe Renault. One of its main uses is to calculate the global warming potential associated with greenhouse gas emissions, measured in CO2 equivalents per vehicle, CO2 EQ. Groupe Renault calculates the actual consumption of its vehicles over 200,000 kilometers and 15 years. For example, a Megane E-Tech Electric emits 25 tons of CO2 EQ over its life cycle. This is almost half the amount of an equivalent model running on fossil fuels, 50 tons of CO2 EQ for a Captur with a petrol engine produced in 2019. In other words, fully electric mobility is more virtuous in terms of CO2 EQ emissions. On this basis, the total for the Emblem project is just 5 tons of CO2 EQ from cradle to grave. That's a reduction of almost 90%. For Renault Emblem, the figure of 5 tons of CO2 EQ from cradle to grave is more than a promise. It has been calculated and audited by independent experts from IFPEN, Institut Français du Pétrole et des Énergies Nouvelles. The decarbonisation strategy pursued by the Renault Group equals reducing greenhouse gas emissions equals reducing our carbon footprint, takes into account the entire life cycle of the vehicle. CO2 EQ emissions in tons per vehicle are calculated using a proven methodology covering each stage in the cycle.